The rusted sign was plain as daylight. Private property. Trespassers will be charged by cattle. But Karen Billings didn't care. Not when she had a fresh manicure, an attitude big enough to fill her luxury crossover, and a title that made her feel invincible. HOA president of Blackstone Ridge Estates. Travis Callahan watched her silver Audi Q5 roll over his cattle guard like it belonged there. She didn't even slow down. Dust kicked up behind her as she headed straight down the dirt road, his dirt road, right into the heart of Callahan Farm. He shook his head from the barn window. That woman's either brave, he muttered to his steer, Old Blue, or too dumb to read. Old Blue gave no comment. He just swayed his 6-foot horns and chewed hay with ominous patience. Karen didn't stop until she reached the edge of Travis's western pasture, where a row of oaks marked the property line she constantly insisted was wrong. She swung open her door and stepped out, phone in hand, waving it like a badge. Just documenting what's clearly HOA-owned land, she huffed into the camera. There's no reason this fence can't be moved back to maybe 3 yards. She was still narrating her imaginary land grab when the herd appeared. It started with a snort, then a distant pounding. Then 40 head of cattle came charging from over the hill like a bovine cavalry. Old Blue led the pack, and he was on a mission. Karen didn't see it until it was way too late. Travis stood on the porch, arms folded, watching. You had your warning, he muttered under his breath. Posted it in red and white. What happened next was equal parts chaos and comedy. Karen screamed, trying to get back in her car. But Old Blue was already there, sniffing the fender like it owed him money. A second steer nudged the passenger mirror clean off. A third stomped onto the hood with a metallic crunch. Karen's voice hit operatic levels. Get them off. This is assault. One of the cows licked her windshield with slow, wet judgment. Finally, she managed to reverse half the bumper, dragging, the engine sputtering, horn honking like a dying goose. The herd backed off, barely. Karen gunned it back toward the street, tires spinning mud, her shriek fading with distance. Travis didn't move, just sipped from his thermos and patted Old Blue when he returned to the gate. 3 hours later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up the driveway. Deputy Lexi Marsh stepped out, sunglasses on, chewing gum like she owned the world. Let me guess, she drawled. Karen. Travis nodded, claiming she got assaulted by cattle. Lexi chuckled. Well, she's filed an official complaint. Said your livestock attacked her private vehicle on public land. He handed her a laminated copy of the county plot maps. This land's been in my family since 1912. Not 1 inch of it belongs to Blackstone Ridge. Figured. Lexi tucked the map under her arm. She also says she's pushing the HOA to annex your western acres. Claims it's for beautification continuity. Travis raised an eyebrow. That a threat? Lexi smirked. With Karen, it's always a declaration of war. As the cruiser pulled away, Travis leaned against the porch post. The sun dipped low over the ridge, but his mind was racing. He knew Karen wasn't done. She didn't lose easy. And now that her precious Audi had been baptized in hoof marks and cow pie, she'd be out for blood or property. He glanced toward the oak line, where Karen had stood with her phone. He knew exactly what kind of woman she was, the kind who thinks rules are for other people. And he wasn't about to let someone like that rewrite history or his fence line. So he grabbed his boots, loaded the drone, and started scanning the entire ridge. Not just to prove she was trespassing, but to catch whatever she tried next. By sunrise the next morning, Travis Callahan already had his drone hovering over the ridgeline. Not for fun, but for evidence. He knew Karen's tantrum from the day before wasn't over. No way a woman who wore pearls to HOA meetings was going to let a herd of cattle dent her pride and her luxury SUV without retaliation. He didn't have to wait long. At exactly 9:02 a.m., two unmarked white trucks rolled up beside the Blackstone Ridge welcome sign. Four workers hopped out with clipboards, measuring tape, and picket fencing. Travis narrowed his eyes from 300 feet up. The drone's camera followed as they began placing bright orange flags on his side of the oak line. He muttered, "She's really doing it. She's building a damn fence on my land." The workers weren't from the county. They were from some landscaping company out of Milltown, probably told this was a routine boundary adjustment. They didn't know they were being used in a private war when Karen had started. The moment her ego got bruised, Travis landed the drone and loaded up the side-by-side. By the time he rolled up to the site, the men had already staked a 40-foot stretch trespassing nearly 12 feet onto his pasture. A bright-eyed foreman stepped forward. "Hey there, sir? You the landowner?" "I am. We're just here installing a decorative boundary fence, per instructions from the Blackstone Ridge HOA." Travis leaned an elbow on the wheel. "You got a permit for that?" We were told it's all HOA property." "Well, it ain't." He pointed toward the oak trees. "That's the legal line, and you're 12 feet over." The guy scratched his head, clearly flustered. "You might want to take that up with Ms. Billings. She's the one who—" "Oh, don't worry." Travis cut in. "I will." By afternoon, Karen herself showed up, arms crossed, smirk dialed to maximum. She wore a custom HOA windbreaker and designer sunglasses like she was there to film a commercial. "Travis," she said, smiling too wide, "you've had that pasture underutilized for years. The HOA board voted unanimously to initiate a minor boundary realignment for community continuity." "You mean theft. I mean beautification," she said sweetly. "Your barbed wire fence doesn't match our white pickets. We can't have Blackstone Ridge looking like a rodeo ground." He stepped closer. "Karen, this land has been Callahan property since before your HOA even existed. Then you'll have no problem proving it. In the meantime, the board has already filed an emergency easement claim with the county. You'll get the paperwork soon." He laughed once sharp and dry. "You don't get to redraw boundaries with a vote in a brochure." Karen leaned in. "Don't you get it, cowboy? You're the only one here who isn't part of Blackstone Ridge. Everyone else signed on. You're the last holdout. And we're tired of your barn, your cows, your scent." He raised an eyebrow. "You mean manure?" "I mean presence," she sniffed. "We're elevating property values, and you're in the way." Without another word, she turned and strutted back to her luxury SUV, now missing a mirror and wearing several hoof print dents like badges of war. Travis wasn't about to let it end like that. He went straight to his office barn, dug out the original land deed, yellowed, notarized, and stamped by the state, then pulled up aerial overlays from every decade since 1960. The boundary line hadn't moved an inch. Karen was bluffing, and she knew it. But that night, something worse happened. A neighbor, Shirley Dobbins, a kind widow from Two Lots over, called Travis in a whisper. "Travis, I just left the HOA meeting," she said. "Karen scheduled a vote to annex your land under a special district clause. Said it's just a formality, since she already talked to the board." His gut tightened. "Did they vote?" "I walked out before they could," Shirley replied. "But she said if no one objects within 48 hours, it's considered approved by default." Travis's eyes narrowed. This wasn't about fences anymore. This was about control. Karen wasn't satisfied with fancy gates and matching mailboxes. She wanted to rewrite maps. But what she didn't know was that Travis had something she did in single quotes T.authority. And a badge. from his time as a county assessor. He cracked a slow grin as he rolled out the big printer. "You wanna play with lines, Karen," he muttered. "Then let's redraw the whole damn game." At exactly 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes before Blackstone Ridge's closed-door HOA session was set to begin, Travis Callahan walked through the gate's boots dusty, hat tipped low, and a manila folder tucked under his arm. Karen saw him from the clubhouse podium and froze mid-sentence. She tried to regain her composure. "Mr. Callahan, this meeting is for Blackstone Ridge homeowners only." "I know," Travis said, his voice calm and cutting. "Good thing I own lot 17. A ripple of gasps moved through the room like a wind through dry corn. Karen blinked. "You? What?" Travis stepped forward and placed a deed on the table. "Bought it at tax sale 3 months ago. It's a 1/4 acre behind your pickleball court. No house, no plumbing, just enough land to make me a voting member." Karen's smile flickered. "Well, I suppose we'll discuss that another time." "We'll discuss it now," Travis said, sitting down another stack of documents. "Because I just heard you're trying to annex my entire farm through a vote. You never notified the public about." Murmurs erupted. Several residents shifted uncomfortably. "I posted the notice," Karen said quickly. "It was printed on the last page of the March newsletter." "You mean the one about spring dog waste guidelines and HOA-approved tulip bulbs?" Travis held it up. "Page 6, bottom corner, in 8-point font." "That meets minimum requirements," she hissed. "Maybe," he said, stepping toward the screen behind her. "But these don't." With a tap on his phone, the screen came alive with satellite overlays, high-res boundary maps, and something else, a real-time drone feed showing the picket fence her crew had installed. "Still sitting 12 feet on his land? Not only are you trespassing," he said, clicking to another slide, "but your fence violates 3 county zoning codes. And your annexation plan? Legally worthless unless you've got unanimous consent of affected landowners. Which, last I checked, includes me." The room went dead silent. Karen looked around at the board, suddenly alone in her war paint. One of the board members, a balding dentist named Ron, cleared his throat. "Karen, you said the fence was already approved." "It was," she snapped. "You said he didn't contest it." "He didn't. At the time." Another board member, surely the kind neighbor who warned Travis, stood up. "I move to rescind the vote. This is overreach. And frankly, it's embarrassing." Karen's jaw dropped. "You're all turning on me? After everything I've done for this community? Like threaten our neighbor with lawsuits?" Shirley replied. "You've turned this place into your personal fiefdom." Karen's voice trembled with fury. "This isn't over, Travis." "I didn't think it was," he said with a slow nod. "But I'm not the one trying to redraw the map with a garden party and a printer." Then he pulled out his ace. "By the way," he said, holding up one last paper. "This is a formal cease and desist notice, filed with the county this morning. Any further construction on or near my boundary line will result in civil penalties, and I've got the footage to back it." Karen's eyes burned holes through him. "You like cameras, Karen," he added, nodding toward the clubhouse's surveillance system. "Good. Because everything you just said, it's on the record." He tipped his hat, turned, and walked out of the clubhouse, leaving behind 40 stunned residents, a mutinous HOA board, and one HOA queen whose crown had just cracked. But Travis wasn't halfway home before his phone buzzed. "Unknown caller," he answered. A clipped, icy voice came through the line. "This isn't finished. You're going to regret humiliating me." He smiled. "Karen, you damaged my vehicle with aggressive animals. That's criminal neglect. I'm filing a lawsuit for willful property endangerment." Travis paused. "You mean you're suing me For your car trespassing on my land, you'll hear from my lawyer." The line went dead. Travis slowed to a stop at the top of the ridge. The wind was light. Old Blue grazed peacefully under the oaks. The white picket fence still stood in the distance, a monument to her arrogance. But now the game had changed. Karen wasn't going to win this with newsletters and garden club pressure. She was escalating. And if she thought Travis was going to just take it, she was in for a surprise. Because she'd forgotten one thing. He didn't just own the land. He knew the law behind it. And next time she came knocking, she'd be greeted by more than a longhorn. Travis Callahan had been to court plenty of times before. Property disputes, land tax appeals, even a water rights hearing once. But never anything quite like this. Today, he'd been summoned to county civil court over his own cow. Karen Billings' lawsuit had been officially filed. The charge? Negligent animal containment and intentional property damage. Her luxury SUV, she claimed, was ambushed by unrestrained livestock operating in a threatening and aggressive manner. In other words, Old Blue assaulted her car. And now, Travis had to defend a 2,000-pound longhorn with an attitude and a love for door panels. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension and perfume. Karen showed up in a tailored navy suit, her hair sculpted like courtroom armor, flanked by her lawyer, some junior partner from a suburban firm that had more experience with HOA bylaws than livestock law. Travis came in wearing his cleanest boots and carrying two things, a binder thicker than a brick, and a USB stick. And he wasn't alone. Sitting calmly on a trailer outside, under the sheriff deputy's supervision, was Old Blue himself. Not to testify just for character reference. The judge, a weathered man with bifocals and a zero patience policy, glanced at the case title. "Ms. Billings," he sighed, "you're suing a cattleman. Because his steer damaged your vehicle?" Karen rose with a righteous fire. "Your Honor, this was not an accident. This was a deliberate act of intimidation. Mr. Callahan maintains hostile livestock, and he uses them to discourage interaction with HOA members." Travis leaned back in his chair, lips twitching. Karen's lawyer stood up. "We have photographic evidence of the damage. A cracked windshield. Horn dents on the hood. One of the side mirrors was completely removed." "By a cow?" the judge asked dryly. "By a weaponized cow," Karen corrected. The courtroom chuckled. Even the stenographer SMIRKED. Travis stood. "Your Honor, I have a few things to submit. First, aerial footage showing Ms. Billings trespassing on my property, recorded 2 minutes before the alleged attack." He plugged in the USB on screen. The drone video played, Karen's Audi rolling across the property line, ignoring the posted sign and parking directly beside a caution, free-roaming livestock notice. Then came the stampede, a glorious parade of hooves, horns, and justice. Karen's face twisted as the footage showed Old Blue casually inspecting the SUV, then rubbing his horn right up its length like a giant slow-moving key. The courtroom howled with laughter. "I also have," Travis continued, "documentation showing that my pasture is legally zoned for livestock, with proper signage in compliance with county code, including a clause that protects property owners from liability when livestock is provoked or trespassed upon." He set down the binder. The table thudded. Karen's lawyer paled. "Your Honor, this isn't relevant. The damage was severe. The trauma—" "Oh, we'll get to trauma," Travis interrupted. "Here's a veterinary report proving Old Blue was vaccinated, tagged, and raised by hand since birth. He's never gored a soul in his life. Unless you count a scarecrow last fall." Laughter again. Karen exploded. "You people are treating this like a joke." The judge adjusted his glasses. Ms. Billings, from where I sit, you drove onto private land clearly marked and parked near free-range cattle. It's not about the fence, she snapped. It's about his intimidation tactics. He's been antagonizing the HOA since this court, the judge cut in, isn't here to referee neighborhood squabbles. It's here to determine if your property damage was the result of negligence or criminal intent. And based on this evidence, I'm dismissing the case. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't. Oh, I can. And I do. The judge gavelled once. Case dismissed with prejudice. Travis let out a slow breath. It was over. At least this round. But when he stepped out into the hallway, his phone buzzed. A message from a neighbor. Her car's back on your land. She parked behind your barn while you were in court. Not kidding. Travis looked up, eyes narrowing. She wasn't just mad. She was escalating. He rushed outside, rounded the barn, and there it was, Karen's beat-up Audi, parked like a middle finger right in his loading zone. Old Blue spotted it instantly. And this time, he brought the whole herd. The wind was still when Travis stepped around the barn and laid eyes on it. There it was again. Karen's beat-up Audi, parked on his land like a stubborn weed refusing to die. Only now, it wasn't just trespassing. It was bait. Travis stared for a long moment, hands resting on his belt, jaw tight. The SUV was backed in, practically kissing the barn door, with the rear bumper still dragging from its previous encounter with Old Blue. A paper taped to the rear window flapped lazily in the breeze. He walked closer and read it. Notice of parking rights, Blackstone Ridge HOA authorized access. Any damage to this vehicle will be considered malicious destruction of private property, and reported. His fingers clenched the edge of the paper. Karen wasn't just trespassing, she was trying to set him up. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She underestimated country patience and farm justice. He heard the low snort before he saw them. Old Blue stood at the gate with his head tilted, as if reading the sign too. Behind him were 14 longhorns and one very angry mama cow named Dolly, who'd had it out for Karen since the day she complained about livestock odor. During a neighborhood walkthrough, Travis raised a hand and unlocked the pasture gate. Your turn, he muttered. The herd moved slow at first, hoofbeats clacking over packed dirt, snorting as they closed in. Old Blue led the charge, his horns casting shadows longer than the Audi itself. Karen's SUV didn't stand a chance. The first hit came from a curious steer that decided the front grille looked chewable. One yank, and the entire plate holder snapped. Off, a second longhorn ambled up, rubbed its side along the back quarter panel, and dented it in with a satisfying pop. Then Old Blue stepped in. With the confidence of a seasoned gladiator, he lowered his head and scraped a horn along the driver's side from tail to mirror. Metal shrieked. Paint curled. And then, the final insult. Dolly, the angry mama cow, climbed halfway onto the hood, leaving behind a deep hoof crater, and something far smellier in the windshield wipers. Travis didn't stop it. He recorded the whole thing from his porch, time-stamped and geotagged. Because this time, Karen wouldn't be able to spin it her way. She arrived screaming 10 minutes later. Are you filming this? That's illegal. Call the police. Already did. Travis said calmly, still filming. Told them your car was parked without permission behind a locked barn gate. I also let them know there was livestock loose. Hope you're up on your insurance. Karen marched through the gate, heels sinking in the mud. You can't do this. I documented my right to be here. The HOA has jurisdiction. Not here, they don't, he said, stepping down from the porch. This is Callahan. Property. Karen. That notice you taped to your window isn't a legal document, it's a tantrum on paper. She looked at her car, muddy, dented, and now partially buried in cow pies. Her face twisted in pure horror. You'll regret this, Travis. This is targeted harassment. This is property destruction. I will sue you into the... A voice interrupted her from behind. Ma'am? It was Deputy Lexi Marsh, stepping out of her cruiser with a coffee in one hand and a citation pad in the other. Did you just admit you parked on private land, ignored posted warnings, and refused to move when asked? Karen spun around. I had HOA clearance, which means nothing here. This ain't a subdivision. This is a working farm. And from where I'm standing, you're trespassing. Again. She slapped a yellow ticket on Karen's windshield. Congratulations. That's your second trespassing charge in 48 hours. You're working your way toward a misdemeanor. Karen turned. Pale Lexi looked over at Travis. You pressing charges? Not yet, he said slowly. I'm letting the cows speak for now. But Karen wasn't listening anymore. She was pacing in a muddy circle, phone out, trying to go live on social media. This man weaponized animals. Against me, I'm documenting everything. But within seconds, the internet did what the internet does. The comments started rolling in. Lady, your car is in a cow pasture. That's what you get for messing with Old Blue. This ain't Desperate Housewives. This is Texas justice. Karen ended the stream with a shriek and a slap of her phone. She wasn't just losing the legal battle. She was losing the war of public opinion. And Travis, he was just getting started. It didn't take long for Karen's latest live stream to blow up. Within 24 hours, her video, originally titled Maniac Rancher Attacks HOA President with Livestock, racked up over 800,000 views. But it wasn't sympathy she got. It was ridicule. Social media labeled her cattle Karen. Memes popped up overnight. One had a still shot of Dolly's fresh deposit on her windshield, captioned HOA property enforcement level. Cowpea Travis watched it all unfold with a silent cup of coffee and an amused Longhorn beside him. But what he didn't expect was the call that came next. It was from his cousin Elijah, a property compliance officer with the State Land Commission. Hey, Trav, Elijah said, his voice low. Just got a file on my desk. Someone in your area's been pushing sketchy HOA annexations. You wouldn't happen to know, eh? Karen Billings? Travis smiled. That's her. She's the HOA queen of Blackstone Ridge. What's the story? Well, Elijah said, her name's all over a new batch of complaints. Turns out she's been filing adjusted property lines with the state assessor's portal falsified, unapproved, and marked as pre-approved HOA zones. Travis froze. She's redrawing boundaries on state records. Looks like it. And it gets worse. There's a trail of missing public notices and one flagged HOA document with forged digital signatures. Travis leaned back in his chair. You want me to testify, can you? If so, we might have a case for HOA fraud and annexation abuse by the following week. A formal state investigator rolled up to Blackstone Ridge in a tan sedan. Her name was Natalie Brandt, buttoned up, clipboard in hand, and every bit as sharp as Karen was smug. Karen, naturally, greeted her at the gate with her usual charm. Oh, perfect. You're here to deal with him, I presume? Natalie raised an eyebrow. Actually, ma'am, I'm here to speak with you. Karen blinked. Excuse me? I'm investigating a series of unauthorized property filings made through the state portal from this HOA. Your digital signature appears on 5 of them. I'm going to need access to your files and HOA voting records. Karen's fake smile slipped like paint in the rain. Those are handled by our administrative coordinator. Then I'll need to speak with them. Now, Karen looked like someone had unplugged her ego mid-sentence. She sputtered something about needing to check her schedule and quickly disappeared inside the clubhouse. Word spread fast. By sundown, half the HOA board knew the state was sniffing around and several members started turning. One neighbor, Eric Talley, showed up at Travis's gate that evening. I didn't know she was redrawing lot lines, Eric admitted. She told us it was just a beautification easement. Said we didn't need to worry about the legal stuff, just sign and trust the process. Travis handed him a lemonade. Did you sign? Eric nodded shamefully. She said it was unanimous. I didn't want to be the difficult neighbor. Well, Travis said, the state's about to find out how unanimous this was. What Karen didn't know, what nobody in the neighborhood knew, was that Travis had been documenting everything. Every fence flag, every contractor, every whispered complaint from a neighbor too nervous to speak up. And now it was all being handed to the state in a neat index folder with timestamps and drone footage. By Thursday, Natalie returned. Mr. Callahan, she said at his gate, we're preparing a hearing with the State Property Commission. I'd like you to appear as a primary witness. Travis just nodded. I'll be there. And I've got more for you. That evening, Karen hosted an emergency members-only HOA assembly to do damage control. She expected support. Instead, she walked into a firestorm. Residents demanded answers. Why were their lots flagged on county records? Why did their own HOA president appear in a state fraud inquiry? Why did she lie about the vote? Karen tried to spin. This is all a smear campaign by a bitter landowner who refuses to join our community vision. But Shirley, the kind widow from Part 2, stood up and raised a finger. You lied, Karen. And you didn't just lie to him. You lied to us. And then, the real twist. I'm pressing charges. Shirley said, I just got off the phone with my lawyer. You forged my signature on an easement vote that never happened. Karen's eyes darted to the back door. She left that meeting without saying a word. No apology. No statement. No smirk. Just silence and the looming shadow of a legal reckoning she couldn't HOA her way out of. By Monday morning, the Blackstone Ridge community was on fire, and not the kind HOA newsletters boasted about. In neighbor highlights, Karen Billings was officially under investigation. The State Property Commission had served a subpoena for all HOA board records, including digital files and video meeting logs. What they found made even seasoned investigators blink. Forged annexation vote as soon authorized. Easement plants and HOA funds spent on Karen's personal landscaping, including an invoice for a private koi pond that didn't exist, except in her backyard. Meanwhile, Travis Callahan sat calmly on his porch, sipping coffee with Old Blue grazing nearby, watching Karen's empire wobble like a rotted porch step. On Tuesday, a special HOA vote was held, not for land this time, but for leadership. Travis didn't attend. He didn't have to. By unanimous decision, the Blackstone Ridge Board removed Karen Billings as president, banned her from further meetings, and revoked her access to HOA funds. When she tried to protest, the board handed her a manila envelope containing formal civil complaints from 3 separate homeowners, 2 for fraud, 1 for harassment. But Karen wasn't the type to surrender gracefully. 2 days later, Travis received an official court summons. Karen was suing him again, this time for emotional distress, public humiliation, and willful destruction of property. She just won't quit, Travis muttered, flipping through the paperwork. But there was something different this time. Karen wasn't using her HOA's legal counsel. She'd hired a private attorney, meaning this was personal now. Deputy Lexi stopped by later that evening, leaning on the gate like she always did. You gonna fight it? Travis nodded. Got no choice, but I've got everything I need. The footage, the trespass tickets, the court transcripts, and something else, too. Lexi raised an eyebrow. More cow pies, he grinned. Better title. records. She laughed, but the mood stayed heavy. You know she's desperate now, right? She's cornered. She put herself there, he replied, and now she's trying to throw punches on the way down. The court hearing was scheduled fast. Karen wanted a public trial, probably hoping for some twisted redemption arc. But the moment she walked into that courtroom, wearing a new suit and a strained smile, it was clear the tide had turned. No cameras, no HOA podium, no artificial control, just a judge, a jury, and a stack of evidence with her name all over it. Travis stood calmly in his cleanest denim, binder in hand. His opening statement was brief. This is a case of ego outpacing the law. She trespassed, lied, forged documents, weaponized her position, and now she wants to pretend she's the victim of embarrassment, when everything she's suffered came from her own actions. Karen's attorney tried to paint Travis as a vindictive rancher who encouraged livestock aggression, but the courtroom wasn't buying it, not when they saw the video, the drone footage, the timestamps, the Facebook clip where Karen shouted, "I'm above this town's rules," right before stepping onto Travis's land. The jury didn't even flinch. But then came the knockout punch. "Mr. Callahan," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "can you confirm the date of this deed transfer?" Travis flipped to a page. "Yes, sir. I bought this lot 4 months ago, behind Ms. Billings' property." Karen leaned forward, confused. "That's not relevant." The judge held up a hand. "Quiet. Mr. Callahan, what have you done with that land?" Travis's lips curled into a slow smile. "I donated it to the local animal rescue network." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Karen's eyes widened. "You? What?" "It's being developed into a livestock rehabilitation station," Travis continued, "complete with a small barn and a 24-hour animal feeding zone right behind her house." Karen jumped up. "You're doing this to harass me. That's illegal now, Ms. Billings," the judge said sternly. "That's property ownership, just like the land you tried to take from him." Karen sat back down, pale and shaking. She didn't speak again for the rest of the trial. The verdict came fast. All counts dismissed. Karen was ordered to pay court fees and a public apology was mandated as part of a mediated settlement, but it wasn't over. Not for Karen. Because now the state had what they needed for criminal charges. And the final blow? HOA members had already petitioned to rename the park across from Travis's farm. They called it Callahan Commons. Karen didn't show up to the next Blackstone Ridge HOA meeting. Not because she wasn't invited. She'd been required to attend, per court order, to issue a public apology to the board and Travis Callahan. The room was packed. Lawn chairs overflowed onto the clubhouse patio. Even the neighborhood teens, usually too cool to care, showed up with popcorn. But the queen of Blackstone Ridge was missing. Instead, her apology arrived in the form of a stiffly written letter, printed on high-end stationery and read aloud by a visibly uncomfortable board member. "To the residents of Blackstone Ridge and Mr. Callahan, I regret any distress caused by my recent actions and acknowledge my oversteps. Regarding property boundary interpretations, I acted with passion, not malice, and I ask for your understanding." Travis didn't laugh, but he came close. Passion. The woman parked her car in a cow pasture twice and tried to sue a steer, but he let it go. Mostly, he had other things to focus on, like overseeing the construction of the new Callahan Commons Animal Rehabilitation Center on the half-acre plot, directly behind Karen's backyard. He'd already welcomed two rescued donkeys, a blind goat named Lucky, and of course Old Blue had a front row grazing spot just 50 yards from Karen's kitchen window. HOA members, especially the ones Karen used to bully, rallied to help. They donated tools, fencing, even bags of grain Dot, and each time they walked by her house, they waved politely to the woman now hiding behind closed curtains. But Karen still had one last move to play Dot. It came in the form of a desperate online. Round one final act of delusion. Posted to a Facebook group she created called Citizens Against Rural Harassment. In the video, she stood in front of her garden gnome display, wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf like a soap opera villain. She claimed Travis had built an animal torture chamber out of spite, that his cattle were psychologically targeting her, that she was filing a petition to have his entire farm declared a public nuisance. She even cited unprovoked mooing as an attack on her peace. The video went viral again, but not for the reasons she hoped. The top comment read, "Karen, mooing is legal in all 50 states. Seek help." The state commission had seen enough. Within a week, Karen was formally indicted for document forgery, fraud, and misuse of HOA funds. Her house, lavishly remodeled using misappropriated landscaping budgets, was seized under a court order. Her HOA privileges were permanently revoked. She moved out under cover of night, loaded into a rented U-Haul that scraped her ornamental mailbox on the way out. Several neighbors watched from their porches, silent. One man played the banjo. Travis, he didn't say a word. He simply stood at the fence line, arms folded. As Karen paused for one last glare through the window, Old Blue was standing beside him. Chewing grass like this was just another Tuesday. Karen's eyes darted to the pasture. She shook her head, muttered something unintelligible, and slammed the U-Haul door. The truck roared away. Peace returned to Blackstone Ridge, real peace this time. The HOA voted in new leadership. Travis was invited as an honorary member, and the park he'd once been nearly annexed from was now home to school field trips, rescued animals, and one very popular longhorn. And every time someone walked by the edge of Callahan Farm and saw the no trespassing sign next to the cowbell and solar camera, they remembered the story of the woman who tried to steal land with signatures and suits and got flattened by the very community she tried to control. As for Travis, he just kept living the way he always had, quietly, honestly, and with a healthy respect for boundary lines. But if anyone ever forgets, there's still a dented Audi hood hanging in the barn. Signed by Old Blue. The end.